welcome to another podcast. So, joining me today is Stephen Crow. Steve, how do you want to be? What's your title? What do you want me to reference you as? Independent artist, concept artist,
Yeah,
dude who draws,
artist in training, I guess.
artist. Oh well,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
student of art. I don't know.
So humble, so humble. So humble Stephen Crow. Well,
That'll
humble.
work.
Yeah, right. So no, Steve. So I met Steve. I want to say around 2010 ish, around there.
Yeah, I
Right?
think so.
Yeah. I think if I remember right, in my head, it was at one of those cons where I was in the back with BDI, I think, with Tom at Big Dog Inc. I think all the way in the back,
Yeah.
and you handed me your comic, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, I still got that. So I don't know
Oh, that
why
hurts. That
I
makes me feel so bad.
huh? No, I love that, right? So, um, but Steve, we found out early on that we're sort of both fans of '90s image comics, right? Like you would say, like
Yeah.
Cliffhanger, stuff like that, like Joe Mad and liquid coloring, and especially like colors. Like I think we have a very similar taste to that sort of thing. And uh, so what happened is the whole reason why I was like, "Hey, Steve, want to come on the podcast and talk to me about colors?" Is and I'm going to zoom in on this in a second, folks. Is so I do covers for a magazine called Megavisions Magazine, which was a digital magazine, and they did a print version that I also did all the layouts, and then I quit that because I don't want to do layouts no more. And then they're relaunching the magazine, but I'm still going to do covers. And one of my inspirations for the video game magazine covers was the PlayStation Magazine covers from the 90s that Joe Mad and Christian Lickner. Like you can see right here is the Resident Evil, and then the Metal Gear was dope. This one in particular, I remember picking this one up when I was in the Army in May of 1999. So I specifically remember I was at the Red Cross booth. I got injured, so I had to do volunteer work at this Red Cross booth and get people up in the middle of the night when they had people died and shit. You know, it sucks. You gotta wake them
God.
up. And I was like, this is a depressing job. And this came out, and I was like, yay! I was all excited about the Phantom Menace, which 30 days later I'd come to rue that. But this was my fucking jam, and I just always loved these sorts of covers and the like this never looked like. I mean, Joe's stuff always looks like fucking Street Fighter, but like Pachalo
Mhm.
did this Resident Evil 3 cover, which didn't look like the game, but I always loved that it had this look. And with Megavisions, like I'm always going back and forth between the type of rendering I should be doing for cover art or maybe interiors, like I'm always like I love the liquid 90s coloring, but sometimes I also wonder, like, is it too over rendered? Am I stuck in a time and place, Steven? You know?
Um, yeah. I don't think so, man. I think it's got that beautiful polish and pop, and I mean, it's definitely like a thing of the '90s. Like late '90s, early 2000s. But I don't think you're stuck. It's beautiful still.
Well, so like this right here is a layout from a comic called Soul Saga, which was drawn by Stephen Platt. I think they only did like what, 6 issues maybe? I think five and a
Hmm.
half. I think the sixth issue was like half he didn't draw because the drawing took forever, and he quit. The colors are done by Christian Lickner, who so Liquid. This is colored by Liquid. The two main guys that ran Liquid is Christian Lickner and Aaron Lucen. Now, with these studios, I can never tell you, how do I say this? So, as I understand it, I own a bunch of color guides from Joe Chiodo, who was the lead colorist over at Homage Studios and Wildstorm Studios later.
Hmm.
And him and those artists at that time would manually color these pages in marker, like traditionally. And then they would have computer separators that they would hand it to, and they would do all the Photoshop rendering, basically. I don't know if that's how Christian, I've never seen color guides from Christian or Aaron, like
Hmm.
physical ones. So I'm assuming they had to have, like, I can't imagine two dudes were coloring all these comics.
No, because
Like,
they were like killing it. They had so many books that they were doing at once.
right, they were doing stuff from Marvel and Top Cow and Image at the same time. Christian got to start at Extreme Colors, um, under Rob Liefeld. Rob Liefeld had his own coloring group in Extreme Studios, and so they built
I
that
had no
there.
idea.
Yeah, I know, right? A lot of people don't realize. A lot of Stephen Platt, went over there after Marvel. So this was from Soul Saga, and I bring this stuff up because it's like I'm not as into a lot of modern comics these days, and I'm like, am I just because I'm getting old? Like, what the fudge is it? And some are, but one of the reasons why is I just don't think there's the budgets to put this level of effort into coloring anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't, I just don't think they're gonna. Like, if you look at some of like here's an example of a cover from Soul Saga, right? Like, look, the rendering's great, but the coloring, dude, like this, it changes everything about this piece. You know?
Yeah, yeah, it really makes it pop in like a different way. I feel like that's the only thing that does get some of the color love. I can't remember her name. It's like Nia. I apologize if I'm
Oh,
killing it, but
Nai Rufino?
yeah, like she'll color stuff to like
Yeah.
a beautiful level. It still doesn't necessarily have like the cuts and grads like the other stuff, like this one.
Yeah, she tends to
But
do like an airbrush, right? More of an
yeah,
airbrush. Yeah, I'm still like these aren't now. These are I own all these issues, by the way, but I grabbed the digital copies. Now the digital copies are still scans from the comic because I think they lost all these files back in the day, bro. Like Eric Larson, creator of Savage Dragon, was saying that that's one of the hindrance to reprinting the original issues in colors. They don't have a lot of the files
dang.
anymore. Yeah, I know, right? So like, but this cuts and grad style is something that I really lean on. I mean, that's a painted style, but I just really let me get you guys a closer look at some of the cuts and grads. That's maybe a little cleaner. So let's go to. I'll get there in a second. Let's go to like you could see like in Battle Chasers, right? So which is also
Hmm.
liquid. You could see this. So these cuts and grads were done by physically drawing these light sources with the lasso tool, and then
Hmm.
airbrushing into there. And I don't know, man. Like I always just loved it. It's very kind of markery to me in some ways, right? Or in some ways, it almost looks like paint too. Like when you would do like, Leyendecker, the
I
painter
think so.
Leyendecker. Yeah, Leyendecker's
Yeah.
from the 30s and had that like stepped look. But I always thought
Hmm.
what was great about the cuts and grads was it allowed the line art to show through. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? Like,
Yeah. Well, and like that's kind of like the thing. I feel like it's not just colors on some level that's been lost. I almost feel like because I mean you still have inkers, but I don't feel like the inkers are like kind of like that Sandra Hope level of inking. Like she was on.
budgets, bro. Like I
Yeah.
mean, unfortunately, having worked in indie comics, you yourself have experienced a bit of this. They just expect you to do everything now.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a group of so you got Joe Matt on pencils, and those pencils they're clean, but they're still pencils. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then you got I think was it McWeeny here drew this, or was it I don't know who inked it.
I think it's McQueenie.
On these earlier ones, I don't know who VR is. The earlier ones are inked by someone else.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, and then you have liquid coloring this, which could be one. It could be Christian. It could I don't know. It could be two people. Like
Hmm.
between the color guides and then so like that's at least three people. And now it's like I'm like I gotta draw and do all of it.
Yeah.
And on a monthly comic that's impossible. By the way, something else, folks. These comics were never on time. They were not monthly.
I think it was 9 issues spread over 4 years. Might have been 3 years
Yeah, and we're
from
getting
issue
the
one to
10th
nine.
issue, unfortunately, from another artist. You know what I mean? 20 years later. So it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, so you could see it says Christian and Aaron are credited on the colors. And I'm going to assume two guys did it, but I'm pretty certain there's probably another. You know what I mean? There's got to be some separators somewhere, but maybe not. They've never done
Yeah.
interviews on this, so I don't know. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Christian's like crazy, crazy quiet. Like I don't even know where he works anymore. I know that he went to Blizzard after he did the Ultimates 3 and he was like the art director on Diablo 3.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
But then after that I have no idea where he went and what he's done. I just
mm-hmm.
know he won't do comic colors anymore.
Yeah, he won't, and they don't even do. He does a painted style now, so like
Hmm.
they don't even do the cuts and grads. But like, I just look at this like it really. I look. This does depend on. This is J. Scott Campbell's pencils, and Richard Friend did the inks. The there's two kinds of like their coloring where it's got all these speculars and it's got like a bounce light, and then they eventually move toward, in the later issues, something more akin to where there's like a soft gradient darkness, like a soft light, almost like a shade of some sort. You can really see it like in these later issues here in Soul Saga, where it got more moodier. It got more moodier. And by the way, the cool thing about the cuts and grads is that people like that glossy paper stock, and I always like the textured uncoated paper stocks. And on the uncoated paper stocks, with that texture, man, it has a look that I think people just don't like. I love the look of it.
Yeah.
Spawn.
Well,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say you have like an understanding just from talking to the printers the way that you have in the past that like the average consumer is not going to understand fully
No.
what that gloss is. Like all my print settings are from your old video that you have on your YouTube from like a decade ago or more.
Well, papers types are so everyone goes to the glossy stuff because it's super shiny. But like Spawn, when Spawn, the comic book Spawn, that's if you guys are unfamiliar with it, that's this comic right here. When Todd had a deal with Walmart to have a version of Spawn in the toy aisle that you can buy the comic, and it was the same issues, but it was printed on a lower quality paper stock. The paper stock from the first the first issue or two issues, like he did the texture paper, and then he moved to glossy around, I don't know, somewhere around 10, I think it was. No, it was the issue with the issue with Angela, I think was the issue where he moved. So issue 9, it moved to the glossy paper stock. I'm a nerd, so I remember this stuff. And at the time, I was like, not the glossy, like I was like, damn it. But I just like, one, I like the way it feels, and two, it adds texture to the art. And it would blend in the same way that, your CRT, everyone's like into CRT monitors and retro games now because they're like, hey, look, the pixels actually blend on the CRT monitors as if it was designed to do that. These grads would blend in the textured paper. And so it would have like a real smooth, but it would look like the airbrush painted stuff, but it wasn't. And look, it's way faster to do cuts and grabs than it is to sit there endlessly painting things I'm sure you've painted a few things.
Yeah,
Eats up
it's
time.
funny because I've used it twice, the cuts and grads, and I love the way it looks, but there's something that's like so mechanical about it that I just never go back to doing it.
Well, so what I've done is I sat down to really kind of figure out how to do my own version of it back in 2016, 2017. And I think I have some way down here. You can see some examples of this is mine. These are not the highest res versions, Rob. These are not the highest res versions, Rob. So this is a cover I did. These are cuts and grads. And what it is I use the lasso tool to draw. So you're drawing the highlights. And then on my Photoshop keys, I have two buttons. One is refine edge, so you can draw the highlights. And then if the drawing the lasso is imperfect, right, or a little off, you can just hit refine edge and refine it a couple times. And then I go with the airbrush and you airbrush in a step, and then I have another key set to contract, and you can contract that selection down 2 steps, and then airbrush 2 steps, airbrush.
Are you going to need to refine it again after you contract? Is it going to
sometimes,
yeah,
sometimes, and honestly, man, like if you throw a little noise filter over it, no one can tell the difference. So, like, because I was spending forever, dude. Like you could see here, like this is clear. I was spending a long time. Like some things I'll manually keep drawing, like the detail on if it needs it. But stuff that doesn't, like this sword that needs to be, this is just contracted 3 times. Contract, airbrush, contract, airbrush, contract, airbrush. And it's darker, but it's the same color because I just set it to like 70%. So you just do. And so these sorts of things, like this is drawn, like this is what I got from that Garrett. That was like, Garrett, what's the fucking mechanical dude in Battle?
Garrison.
So like Garrison
Caliber.
has those spots, right? It's like,
Yeah.
this is you can just draw these, and then just, if you want it sharper, leave it, because it's armor, or then just refine it, and then you get a little smooth.
Yeah.
And then these blades here are literally just like, I selected the line art and contracted it here. like you
Yeah.
don't even have to be that perfect with it. So now, granted, technique aside, there is something to be said about like mood and storytelling. So like when Christian Lichtner went to do these painted colors over Joe Mad's pencils for Ultimates 3, like, man, you could see like this is just painted, you know.
Mm.
Um and the mood on it is super fucking good. Like, like this, it's like airbrushing texture stuff. But like, I imagine that took longer.
Yeah, I'm sure it had to take a lot longer.
Right?
I personally, I know there was a lot of people who didn't like the run on Ultimates 3, and some of it seemed like it was story, but a lot of people were bagging on the colors back in the day. And honestly, this is probably my favorite colors that I've seen from.
Well, I'll tell you why they're bagging on it. So one, the story is broke. It feels like there's pages missing in between pages, right?
Mhm.
For whatever reason, I don't know. Uh, and its first run, when it printed in individual issues, it printed dark, like way dark. The black plate, like this was barely even visible.
Mhm.
So it's the trade that they went and did a reprint, and they got the colors right.
It up.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. And then some people just didn't like the pencils. They wanted it to be inked, like the way it used to.
Yeah, see, and there's like this cool balance to me, like, and I miss inkers a lot, but for this, just in terms of pure colors, like you get Joe Mad's pencil energy comes through in this a lot, and then to me, it feels like it's just that next step in the evolution. I think if like we were still getting like solid budgets for like colors and comics, this is the direction that I would prefer to see it go. Like each page to me feels like it's like a masterpiece of a painting.
I totally agree, man. I mean, Christian Lichtner is just like, I think he's, people gotta understand, like when this stuff came out, it was like they were called the ILM of comics,
Hmm.
Liquid. Like it was like there was something. Even Christian's work on Extreme Colors, there was something different when he was on a book. I'm like, this stands out. Same with Brian Haberlin at Top Cow. When Haberlin took over Top Cow's colors, he was the one that went on to do Spawn, which you can see here. Like Haberlin just had a real good, clean mood.
Hmm.
Like he could piece all his pieces to like look at this. Like it seems so simple, but go find even a modern comic today that does this level of like airbrushing with the cuts, and like look at this, like
Yeah.
the purple, and allows everything to shine through, and then he bust out, look at these cool flames, dude. Like there's something that just, I know it's not realistic. Like now people would probably just use like flame textures or some shit, like you know what I mean, like they do like sometimes they do that what's the dot the noise where they like dust and scratches or something, right? Where they
Oh
like,
yeah, they literally just add noise and then turn it up, and yeah.
yeah. But even then, some of the Spawn pages that Haberlin was doing, this is very Hellboy-esque with the browns, right? But it just has like an extra level of like, look, there's some blue. This is blue, a light blue on that yellow, not white. Um, and
There's a
then
part of me that wonders, like, as time's gone on, number one, like we both know, like comic books don't sell nearly as well. But the other thing is like how much art jobs have opened in like gaming, and it seems like the colorists kind of became more painterly, and it's far more lucrative for like artists to migrate towards games. It feels like
but I
than to
feel
stay.
like if fucking X-Men looked like this shit, I'd be buying it. Like, and I get like, I'm not knocking people's illustrative abilities. I'm just saying
Yeah.
that there was a level of like, look at the artistry on a cover with the Muka background and the way they would
Mhm.
do you could say, well, rubber proportions are all stretched. No, 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 no. And I'm like, I don't give a shit about all that. I'm just saying that they were taking it like everything could be a poster, you know?
Mhm.
And so, I mean, I have my own personal theories about comics and budgets. Like, if it were me, given how big Disney is now that they own Marvel, and AT&T now that they own DC, I would write off the entire comics division as a loss. I would give everyone equal pay. Everyone making fucking $100,000 that's on books. Like, seriously, I would fucking do it. And then I would probably do the individual issues in black and white if I had my way, and the trades would be in full color. And the covers would obviously be in full color. But that all being said, I would do that for a reason. One, all of their comics and any material that they're doing is being turned into movies, or you know what I mean? Like that's a $1 billion R&D department that gets done for nothing. You know? So like, even if they're like, we lost $20 million in comics, I'm like, no, you invested $20 million to make a fucking $1 billion on a movie. Like, stop thinking about like the comics. I don't know, man. Like if this were, you know, like how, like if, come on, man, like why is this not, aside from maybe the creators are crazy and they're, you know, I don't know, but like if this were a new Marvel comic, right, that was like Eternals or something, like that would be the basis for a poster or concept art, but it's the comic. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
and it's just a shame that they keep running comics like on that mentality from the 60s and 70s. Where like, we can't, was it Rob Liefeld has a podcast called Robservations. On the last episode, he was talking about in the 70s, they were licensing Conan, and the guy who ran Marvel at the time, for any license, they refused to pay more than $150 for a license, for the rights to do anything. And you go, well, it's the 70s. I'm like, yeah, even then, that's like not even $1,000. Like $500, $700 in the 70s. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it's like, that's just how they are, man. You know? And it's a shame because, I mean, look at this, like, from the Ultimates, like, this predates the MCU, you know? And I mean, that looks a lot like fucking, give him a beard, you know? Give him a beard, and, you know?
Yeah. Well, Joe Mad draws everything that is man whenever he draws a man, and Chris is pretty much everything that is man as Captain America,
Right.
especially with the beard.
But these colors sell a lot of it too, dude. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Yeah.
so
I kind of feel like that's the thing, is like there's almost like some of that level of passion that's gone. Like you said, if X-Men looked like some of these, you'd be buying it. I feel the same thing. Like when I go in, like some of the covers look good, but even with like some of the flaws, like you were saying, the anatomy on that one girl wasn't great. Like to me, like give me like interesting imperfection, but like the
yeah,
guy went in on the style, right? Like I would
I'm
take that 100 times out of 100 over perfect.
I'm fine with, so I need people to understand, I don't care about anatomy. You go, what do you mean you don't care about anatomy? I don't care if, so here's this. When I read a comic book or I look at a piece of art, I'm not looking for someone to reproduce life. I'm looking for someone to interpret life. In the same way, because this came up recently with J. Scott Campbell. People were redrawing his covers and shit. And here's how you fix the anatomy. No one would stand like this. And I'm like, there's a couple things to that. One, if you there's an artist called Michelangelo, and I don't know if you guys noticed, but half of that dude's figures, they don't exist like that in real life. They don't. People don't pose like they do. Women are super fucking manly. I mean, they got giant fucking ripped arms and big ass feet and small heads. He's interpreting life in the same way that this might make more sense to people who aren't artists. Go read the lyrics to any song and talk like that to people. Like, go find a love song and just talk to a woman, right? No one talks like they do in song lyrics, right? You're interpreting the way people talk to compose a song. This is someone composing art. They're creating a silhouette that, you know, is not, it's not, yeah, it's not realistic. People wouldn't, you know, but you're able to read it from, look way back here. See that?
Yeah.
So same with this stuff. Like, oh, she's not in the scale. This is like modern art direction from studios I would give. She's not in scale with him, and that would be me. He's like 10 times bigger than her. Like, no, that's just a goddamn composition. So it's odd, right? You know, like
Yeah.
the theories
I
on
miss
that.
that. I miss the kind of like you go back and look at kind of how everybody was shooting from the hip, trying to do just like the coolest thing in comics in the 90s, and it was like, yeah, we screwed that cover up. but it still looks cool, right? It's like I just miss that. Like, yeah, it looks cool, and it's okay to just look cool.
Yeah, so here's some Marvel stuff from the '90s. You go, Rob, what about the Marvel? Well, the liquid colored this, and this is over. This is Salvador Larroca. I always get Larroca and Pacheco's art a little goofed up. So this is Salvador Larroca, and yeah, I mean, name a fucking person that's built like this.
Yeah.
It's a goddamn comic, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's fucking cool, right? Like I would. This looks like a ready-to-made action figure,
Hmm.
you know. And this coloring, like I always think, man, is it too? But like, I don't think that's too much. You know what I mean? Like this rogue is probably. I mean, like look at this rogue. Like she's probably over rendered overall, but at the same time, she's popping off the page.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't. I always wonder, like now, like how would this just be flat? This would probably just be
Yeah.
flat, and they go, what am I supposed to look at right here? You know, like maybe.
I guess you have to define the goals. Like, is it over rendered? Are you trying to literally just do the best thing to tell the story and not do any more work than that? Or are you trying to kind of like just make things like you said with that rogue, just like pop off the page?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. I struggle. Like I said, my own art. I struggle with like so. This is Aaron Luson's colors on Hellboy with Jeff Matsuda. This was based off the Hellboy cartoon, and he went to
Yeah.
this really sort of dark, moody, painted look after a while. That's Christian Ligner, which I like too. Like they
Yeah.
eventually all kind of went more painted. I guess as they got into game development. This is a cover we did at Play Magazine. This is about a year or two before I showed up, but I have that high res art somewhere. I stole it. Like, somewhere on a
Did
drive, I got it. You know?
that Jeff Matsuda as well?
Jeff Matsuda drew this. Yeah, yeah. Jeff
That's a
Matsuda
good.
was. Go ahead. Sorry.
He's so good.
Yeah, he was friends with Dave Halverson, who was
Hmm.
the owner of Play Magazine, and um, so Dave would get them on that book as often as possible. And Jeff and Aaron were doing the lead concept on this game right here called Death Junior. It was on the PSP. And
Hmm.
that's what I was hired when I was hired at Play to do a graphic novel based off Death Junior that would be the basis for the next game. And then the recession happened and wiped out all my funds. So such is life. So, but yeah, I don't know, man. Like I get every era has its artists and its art styles, you know, and I'm not gonna go our stuff looked better. It didn't. I mean, there's a lot of bad art in the '90s, just like there's bad art now.
Yeah.
I do think though that like there are flatter, simpler colors that I really like, and if we go over to some modern-ish stuff, like let's start with, you know, this is older, but it's Mignola, right?
Hmm.
This Mignola flatter colors, man, I think the mood on it's perfect. I think if you had a ton of rendering on top, it don't play as well. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Also, I would
Yeah.
mention to you, and I'm gonna let you talk, dude. But I just want to, before I forget, I was mentioning to you these. This is where paper stocks really make a difference.
Hmm.
So this stuff here, when you get the digital copy, like, oh, it's flat colors, like the older, you know, reprints. But you would see the paper. It was printed on that uncoated paper stock, which added a lot of fluctuation to the color, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It feels like with like that horror vibe too. Like it feels like that very gothic. Like it's really selling the idea of Gotham and stuff. Like the over rendering would just feel kind of cluttery and unnecessary.
I would agree. I mean, like look at this page right here. Like, what more does it need? I mean, look at that. Like, I always wonder, like, man, as much as I love drawing, like, everyone draws, you know, super rendered Jim Lee Batmans now, and I'm like, but that works.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like that scene in it's that one shot in Batman '89 where he's in the cathedral and he's just like walking, and I'm like, this is like, look at that. That's Batman,
Yeah.
and it's nothing, right? It's just, what is this? It's a fucking lump with a spot of color. If we go to Mark Silvestri's Batman, which I got some of that stuff over here. There's one there. Where is that big piece? Where's the big piece? Here. But so David Finch drew this. So like it's super cool. Everything's fucking rendered. But at the
Hmm.
same time, I just can't imagine that working for Mignola's stuff. I don't know.
No, it's just a different style of art. I heard somebody say that Mignola's goal with all of his pieces were, especially like the Hellboy, was to kind of look like it was like a stage scene. So you're like watching a play, so everything's got like that really stark contrast and light.
Oh yeah, I get that little diorama-ish too, but yeah, like on a stage, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Especially with his older stuff, dude. He would draw all this 100% through into pencils, and then he would ink it, and then wipe away all the construction. And then
yeah,
eventually it turned to shorthand where he sort of just like draws outlines and puts in all the shadows. And I really, the older stuff, I get it takes longer, but you can see the three dimensionality. Like he drew this Batman through at some point. It
yeah.
connects, you know? So, um, so like, I wanted to bring up this. So this was my first. I don't know what was your. I want to talk. You talk for a second. What was your first colorist or the first book you ever saw where you were like the colors were like the thing that brought you to?
It had to be probably like one of the Spawn issues. I don't remember which one because I couldn't get like a bunch of comics. Most of the time, if I could get any type of comic, just because I wanted a collage of art, I would buy the Wizard magazine instead. So I didn't have crap for comics growing up. I had a few Spawn issues though, and I just remember. Um, I don't remember, like I said, I don't remember which issue it was, but Sam and Twitch were in it, and I remember like Twitch's glasses were just kind of like illuminated in the shadow, and I was like, oh my god, that looks so cool.
Nice.
But yeah, it was a lot of the Spawn stuff. When I could get issues, I would get Spawn. Um, and then after that, it was probably like I saw an ad for Battle Chasers, and I was like, oh my god, like those are the coolest colors I've seen in my entire life.
Yeah, Battle Chasers was like, I mean, this was the first Wizard issue where they did that. So just Scott Campbell, there's Humberto Ramos, and then the Joe Mad. Like that cover was dope. Like all three different
Yeah.
styles coexisting, you know?
Yeah, that little Wildstorm stuff was like all the comics they had were great. Like I loved Crimson, loved Danger Girl, and Battle Chasers. Is probably my all time favorite comic.
Yeah, for me, it was these right here. These were these reprints of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles,
Hmm.
done by First Publishing, and they were printed. The originals were in black and white, but for the reprints, and I have these up on my shelf, my originals. Um, these were painted for the
Hmm.
reprint, so the interiors were actually like this is like wash paint and airbrush,
That's so cool.
and it just added this level of like it look is very like I said. This is hand painted, but you can sort of get a cuts and grads feel from it if you
Mhm.
look, you know, because of the hard edge, like spot little gouache. But yeah, this is gouache and airbrush, so this background would be airbrush.
That's so cool, dude.
And like if you look at this shredder, I mean, like look at this, like that, like the painted, right? Like it just, and I was like, what is like this? And it wasn't until The Dark Knight Returns that I saw anything that I think this was done after, so The Dark Knight Returns was first. So they were definitely looking at Lynn Varley's Dark Knight Returns, and when they went and did the color versions, they were like, we have to do it like this because you know Kevin and them were all about that Frank Miller look. Um,
Mm.
but you can see like this is Kevin's like painting with airbrush and acrylic or whatever gouache over the art, and so like that sort of thing was the first thing that brought me into it. And then it was Steve Olaf, the lead guy on Spawn for the first 25 to 30 something issues. He
Hmm.
did he did the Legends of the Dark Knight, which I don't have a sample of right now, but he was started coloring on Legends of the Dark Knight, um, and I could tell the difference in computer colors. Like there was just a giant difference in the rendering. I couldn't explain what it was. I'm like, this looks amazing. Who is Steve Olaf? And, and then he went and did the Akira recolor, and then went to Spawn.
Yeah, it seemed like the saturation was one of the things that kind of changed with the digital colors kind of coming up. Like it felt like the saturation just got like much stronger.
Mhm. Yeah, well, the ability to do more colors, right? Like there's just a wider color range. So, and then let's see here. What have I got some good examples here of something? So yeah. So let's go to some modern. So this right here is a colorist. This is a guy named Carlos Maglia, who passed away unfortunately in his 50s a few years back. He he's really big in South America.
Mhm.
Came over here in the mid 90s. There was a cartoon based off a comic they had done for the longest time called Cyber Six. And then Wildstorm hired him. He did an issue of Crimson, he did like an issue on Wildcats, and then he did this Star Wars Underworld. His art style was super cartoony, but when he eventually did this book called he did this called Superman Infinite. He did all the colors as well, and these are actually hand painted backgrounds with
Dang.
Photoshop, CG. Yeah, like his. You want to see a true master of doing everything? This the dude. Like it looks like an animated movie on paper. Like,
There's so much motion in like in and honestly in both of them. It looks so good.
yeah, his art for whatever reason just did not take off in this country. I don't know. I don't know why. I really don't. Like he could
Yeah.
even like, he would use like this right here is a photo that he did the paint daubs thing. And then he would
Mhm.
add like painted over, you know. But like
Yeah.
it works, man. Like, and this is like actual painted. Like it works. He did a book. Well, this is one of my favorite pages too. Like, and you can see like this is like one of those like Photoshop like filters or maybe even like Kai Studio Pro ones. Like it looks cool. Like it actually.
Yeah, that looks awesome.
Yeah, the story is a little tough to read. I don't know why. It's not bad. It's just the writing's a little tough to figure out what's going on sometimes.
Yeah.
But he also did a book. I have the physical copies of this. These are scans called Canary, which is just I highly recommend picking like this. He go to the interior. He did his whole background on mixed media paper, like
Mhm.
mixed teens cans maybe, and then he throws this animated digital character over it, and it's just like that contrast of super loose sketch and
Yeah.
is something.
It almost feels like it's straight out of like an animated movie or something.
Yeah, I mean he was cosmic. I mean I was like, why is this not Aquaman, like, or a DreamWorks movie, right? Like, why is this guy should have been doing Fathom fucking issues and shit, Like, this is so good.
This style's so cool.
Yeah, and I know you look at it, you're just like, I wonder, and people go, how long did it take? I'm like, too long, but
Yeah.
we're the only country, man. We're one of the few who do monthly comics. The idea that this has to be done every month because they would sell a lot more issues in other countries. So.
Yeah. I wish that they would abandon that because I honestly think that's almost been the thing that's kind of made comics less appealing to me. Like I'm reading more manga now than I read like I don't read anything concurrent. If somebody tells me there's like a really good book, I'll go back and check it out once there's like a trade or something. But it just feels like the endless need to churn out like a new X-Men, but not necessarily tell like a good X-Men story. Like
Well,
I'm not.
I pick up Savage Dragon because it's I've been buying it since 1992. I have like every issue. So,
Mm.
um, but with the main two, I only gravitate, and this has been this way since the 90s. I only go over there when an artist shows up that I care about is doing something. Like when
Yeah.
Capullo did Court of Owls and um, anything he does with Swamp Thing now, I'm like, if you draw Swamp Thing, I'll buy it. Like. But yeah, it's just not enough. It feels like it's like 22 pages, and they don't keep the art teams on board
Yeah.
anymore. Like there's a lot of conspiracy theories about why that is. I tend to think they're true. I think that they don't keep artists on board because they don't want them to be synonymous with the character anymore after Image. Seems to be the theory, and it's all true. I
I
mean,
mean,
hmm?
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Other than Jim Lee, name an artist that's synonymous with the last one would be Joe Mad with X-Men, right? And people forget he drew X-Men. Really?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Mark Bagley with his run on Ultimate Spider-Man, to me they go hand in hand. Like that's my favorite Spider-Man run. Maybe that's why, but
It's funny, man. For some reason, I just don't associate him with Ultimate Spider-Man. I associate him with Venom, but that's my age. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, the Venom series, right? Like Carnage.
Ultimate Spider-Man started coming out when I was like 15, and so
Oh
like
yeah, I'm older. Oh my, I was in college, and it was cool. But it was
I
like,
secured Doctor Girl, so Peter Parker was my spirit animal.
yeah. So, and in terms of modern colorists, I think Bengal is probably, again, he does everything himself, and I think it nearly kills him every time he does a book. This was Death or Glory. And again, a level of like, he has like a paint, he paints with a very soft gouache brush, and then does a lot of light sources, right? Like really focuses around atmosphere and light, not a lot of over rendering here, but like it paints the fucking story, right? Like, again, this is not possible in a monthly comic. These issues are always late. He's like, I'm sorry, it's late, but like he's been doing this. Man, this guy's been consistent since 2002. I want to say I've been following his work. 2002, 2004. You know, and then in terms of a team, more recently, White Knight with Sean Gordon Murphy, and then was it Buckingham? No, Mark Buckingham's the inker, the colorist. I forget the name, but they managed to like find a good mixture of not over rendering,
Yeah,
and just keeping that mood. I think Batman works better with less render. I don't know why that is.
that
Like,
gothic vibe. Because I mean, with Sean Gordon Murphy, you're gonna get like that nice texture anyways, just in his brushwork.
yeah, but
So it
they're
doesn't
still
need.
throwing. This is still a paper texture or a watercolor paper texture that's set to like a difference layer or something like on top of that. So that's but it's what gives the flat color this fluctuation, which by the way would probably also have occurred in the paper stocks if they were printed on like crappier paper. You know what I mean? Like a lot of that fluctuation also used to come in through just uncoated paper stocks, but they're all printed on clean paper, so now you have to kind of recreate that. Some people do it by creating halftone dots, but adding extra little like paper textures help throw off those fluctuations too. I used to think those fluctuations were intentional back in the 90s. And I'm like, yeah, how'd you do that? They're like, that's the paper, you idiot. I'm like, oh, shit. Like, because I would go to, I grew up in San Diego, folks. So I would go to San Diego Comic Con 92, 93, 94, all the way through 97 until I joined the Army in 98 every year. So that's a good 5-year run. And that's the rise of computer colors, right? And so I would go there and just try to find anyone who colored. How did you do this? How did you do that? And they would just be like, it's not that complex, or, we did it this way. So, but I love it all, man. I'm just like, again, I just think about my own work. Like, am I just doing too much or not enough? This was Creech. This was the first issue, the first series of Creech. I thought was, and it would be amazing to see. They'll never do it, but I would love to see some of Capullo's work and Batman colored like this to
Yeah,
see if there's a difference. You know what I mean? Or how much of a difference there is. Compared to the flatter colors. Like, I wonder, because this is not, I think this is super tasteful with the airbrush, the spot colors here, the airbrush, and then with some rendering, like,
yeah, it looks good.
I think it's not overdone, but it still has that pop, and the greens and the purples.
Yeah, I think like you said, they'd never do it, but who knows? Because I mean, with like you were saying a minute ago with Batman, um, he doesn't necessarily need that same level. But now I'm kind of curious, and I'm a little tempted to maybe color a panel or two and just see what it would be like.
Yeah, be careful because, like, there's so Frank Miller. People have been like his new art sucks. I don't think it exists that way. The colors don't help it. So a lot of his newer stuff looks cool when it's in black and white,
Mm.
and it's very Robert Crumish at this point. It's gone more indie comic in a way, 70s or 80s indie comics. But they keep trying to do like these rendered colors over his stuff, and I'm like, that doesn't help. And so some artist, some colorist or whatever was like, hey, if you took it and you did like graphic design style colors with a lot of paper textures, it would look like this. And I thought it looked fucking amazing. And the internet was like, "How dare you touch his color?" You know what I mean? So I like to see you give it a shot. Just show it to me, you know, so I can see it. But like Frank's stuff would look way better like this. Like it needs something more graphic than
Yeah,
fully rendered. Than like I would not take Frank's colors and go, Christian Ligner, do this to it. Like it doesn't. I mean, look, with
yeah.
every good team, you need the right pairing of inker and colorist. You know.
Well, and like the colorist always has to play with like the style that is there. I don't think I would ever post that stuff. Like I actually did some colors over the first Battle Chasers issue 10 page that was released. I spent like an hour just trying to make some stuff like pop a little bit, but I don't dare to post it. Like, I don't
Yeah,
want
they would
to.
take it
I don't
all.
like
Super
doing
mad
the
at you.
fix for Jason Campbell. I'd be that dick.
Yeah, you'd be like, you're trying to fix art now. Like, no, just I look. The Battle Chasers thing is bums me out because Lullaby's drawing it, and I think is he doing the colors too, or is it another colorist?
Yeah, he's doing the colors. I don't think he colors that much because a lot of the stuff he does for like Blizzard, somebody else comes in and renders his stuff.
Right. So Lulo stuff is awesome, and if it were called like Battle Chasers semicolon, you know what I mean, like something else, I'd be super happy for it. It's just because it's called Battle Chasers issue 10. You know that I'm like, it needs to fit in. It needs to look, you know, like even if it didn't look like this, I would accept this. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It needs to be Joe's pencils with Liquid's colors or something akin to it, you know? Otherwise, don't call it issue 10 because it's like, what am I supposed to do? Get a trade that has 9 issues of Joe's art, and then it's Lulo stuff, which don't look nothing like it came from the 90s, bro. Like, you know, which I don't have it
yeah.
here, but if people go look, I mean, I just don't think it does Lulo any favors too. You know, it's like,
The
you know,
interesting thing is like he can hit that level of quality. Like he's got like some of the same shape language. He kind of goes in a slightly different direction, but he's not necessarily doing it with his run on Battle Chasers. Doesn't look like. But like if you go back and look at some of his stuff that he did for like in the Curse of the Worgen story for World of Warcraft,
hmm.
bro, some of those pencils for those pages are ridiculously good.
Yeah. I remember the Warcraft stuff. It's not a matter of what people can do. I just think like it shouldn't be called issue 10. Like, you
Yeah,
like I just don't think that's fair to anybody. You know, like even if J. Scott Campbell came on to do an issue, yeah, I think that'd be great. But I would not want it to be issue 10. Like issue 10 implied that he was finishing that story. He was going to do one more issue and kind of wrap those that run up. You know,
yeah.
that was sort of how it was pitched on the Kickstarter. You know, like, it's how I saw it. So.
Well, and that's what I guess, and I didn't see it, but I saw somebody say the other day that he was going to release like penciled versions of issue 10, 11, and 12, and not like thinking that we're not going to get that now just hurts.
I would prefer, like, he does everything now on an 8.5 by 11. So even these pages were not done 11 by 17. They're done, this is 11 by 17, but it's two 8.5 by 11s. He draws them super small now to get them done faster. It's also why the scaling, like, characters are generally bigger here than they used to be, you know? But it's fine. I mean, it helps if it gets work done and, you know, his composition is just so great. I'm like, I'm fine with it. I would accept a penciled interior with just color covers.
Yeah,
You know, do Battle Chasers, you know, penciled manga in a way. You know what I mean? Like, it's just Rob Liefeld made a comment on his podcast. I'm bringing up Rob Liefeld's podcast because it's really good, dude. Even if you don't care for Liefeld's art, dude, which I do, but if you don't, super good podcast. And he was talking about Image Comics, and he goes, you know, our books, his books, you know, all the creators of Image Comics books, they're intrinsically tied to the creators. Even when like
mhm,
another artist like Capullo took over on Spawn, and at first it was all right, but around several issues in, there was this fight between Spawn and Violator in the sewers, and at that point I was like, okay, Capullo surpassed McFarlane on this book. Like McFarlane could never have drawn this thing, you know. And he did it for 75 issues, but no one associates Capullo with Spawn. They still associate, you know what I mean? It's still McFarlane, you know,
Yeah,
even though Capullo drew way more. And
a lot of the iconic stuff that you think of Spawn is probably Capullo.
100%. And you know what it was like to be an artist, and I always tell people that the best artist in comics is Greg Capullo, and they're like, who? You know? I'm like, it's great. This is it was so frustrating. But they are intrinsically tied to their creators. To the point where it's like, you know, like I get Spider-Man can move on to different people, but I don't think when Danger Girl was drawn by Phil Noto, and you know, uh, I was like it's fun, but this isn't, you know what I mean? Like it should be like a backup 6-page thing in an issue of Battle Chase. Like it's if the curator ain't doing it, I'm just not in for this, you know? Same with Battle Chasers. Is like if Joe ain't doing it, I mean, at least with the game, it looks like his art, right? If Battle
I feel
Chasers,
like I'm such a that I'm too biased to give like a good like comeback because I'm like, no, I'm gonna read it. Like I'm so excited.
huh,
I don't disagree.
I'm gonna read it, but I just think it's unfair to everyone. Like, you know, like let me I don't know, man. Like people can just disagree with me. I don't give a shit. Like if Capullo said I'm doing, because Capullo's been talking about doing another Creed series. If the third volume of Creed was drawn by Galapion with, you know, I'd be like, or you know, like Ryan Otley and him teamed up once to do Haunt, right? Where Capullo did the layouts and Otley did the pencils. And it was like if that were Creech, I'd be like, I don't know about that. Yeah, like it's cool, but can't just Otley make up his own thing? Like I don't. Why does it have to be this? So
People are gonna disagree on the Battle Chasers thing. I think they're gonna disagree with me because like reading through the comments, people are pissed about the Battle Chasers stuff.
well, I think the anger though. I'm not pissed. I'm just like, well, that's unfortunate. I think the anger comes from the fact that on the Kickstarter, Joe specifically said he was going to do it. Like I backed the Kickstarter 2016. You know, I was in Fort Collins, Colorado at the time, with my wife on vacation. We were like, "That's right, it's awesome. He's always going to draw it." And then even then, I was like, 50-50 chance that's true. I come from the days when Joe and Matt was like, I'd be drawing Battle Chasers, but I'm playing Banjo Tooie right now. So like, you know, he said that in a Wizard interview. He's like, I've been playing a lot of Banjo Tooie. I really should be drawing this, but like I'm not. Can make enough money, and it's like, no, he can't make enough money. You know, he's probably getting residuals from X-Men and shit. You know, at the time, but
The Battle Chasers sold to Fox back in the day, so I think Battle Chasers did pretty good
did
for
Battle
him.
Chasers get? Did he get a rights with Fox? I know Fathom got an option with Fox
He
Animation.
did bought movie rights for it. I
Oh wow!
imagine by now fired, but yeah, because I was reading a thing the other day, and Battle Chasers like I think it was issue 4 hit #1 on the charts, like it was beating everything Marvel and DC. Um, and Fox optioned rights for it. It's like I feel like Battle Chasers could be one of those things that probably not like big as World of Warcraft or anything, but like
I think
it could be one thing.
Disney should do a CGI animated series that look like his art, like 3 movies. You know what I mean? They're going for that teen market now with their animation. Same with Big Hero 6, and you know, to an extent too with the Frozen series. You know, and it's like if Fox optioned it, then Disney has it now, and
Yeah,
they could totally make it look like a stuff. But to me, man, Battle Chase issue 10 should look like this. Like
you saw
I've been
some.
saying forever. Like I know McFarlane's been talking about doing this other Spawn movie that's all not Spawn. But I was like, why don't they just make a fucking Spawn CG or a movie that fucking looks like goddamn Capullo's art?
Yeah,
You know, like I like it. Look, man, I'm an artist. I like it when shit looks like people's art. You know,
yeah,
100%. Like,
for sure.
imagine if Invincible didn't look like Cory Walker and Ryan Otley's art.
Yeah,
What if it looked
Y-
like Archer? Like that Superman cartoon that looks like Archer. Like that would go
yeah,
over well, you know?
yeah.
You know, well, it's easier to draw. Or God, I love the animation, but people hate it. The Thundercats Go, you know? People really don't like that. They call it Cal Art style, which is bullshit, but
I'm going through the Thundercats from 2011 now because it's on Hulu.
sure.
That show's so good.
Oh yeah, it's serious. It's well. Believe me, man. I was at Con. I went to Con. I was at Con that year when they debuted it. I was like, "This looks good," and no one watched it. So
Dude, It's
Yeah.
such a bummer because I'm on episode 20 now. There's like 6 more episodes, but like every episode, I'm like, God damn, this show is really good.
Yeah, I wish they had made a serious Thundercats reboot and then did Ghostbusters like as a goof. Like I'd be fine with that. Like funny Ghostbusters.
That would make more sense.
Yeah,
Like
with that funnier art style with them shooting around proton packs and blowing shit up and stuff. Like, you
that would
know.
be perfect. That'd be so good.
Yeah, people want serious Thundercats. They don't want goofy Thundercats. I don't, I don't personally. I grew up in the era. Again, my first Ninja Turtles were the serious Ninja Turtles, the black and white Ninja Turtles, right? And it looked
Yeah,
like this, and um, then the cartoon comes out, and everyone's like, "That's their turtles," and I had to reconcile, but it's not my turtles. They're serious, and and they have red bandanas, and that's when I realized, oh, so two things can exist simultaneously,
yeah,
and for a point we had three. We had this, the movie, and the cartoon, and the movie was somewhere in between.
yeah.
Plus the video game version, which was sort of the cartoon version, but so I'm fine with like, but the people get they don't get Thundercats often, so when they're like, we finally got a Thundercat, it's like, all right, perhaps if Justin Roiland and what's his face, Dan Harmon had written the Thundercats Go cartoon, it had just the writing was a little stronger, it would have been fun, people would have chilled out.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, man, have we reached? I mean, reach any consensus to like? Is this a dated look now? You think? Like, you think? Is it?
Yes, I don't think there's any consensus because we went to one point where it's like we love it and we miss it and we wish it was still like this. But then we went to Batman and it's like even this stuff didn't look like that back then and it still fits. So it's like when it when it would work, they should still do it. I think in some books, but it's not like in every book. Look, I don't know, man. Maybe that's the consensus.
Right. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, I just think about my own stuff. I'm like, should I be rendering more? Like, I just love the cuts and grad style.
Yeah.
So, like, I tend to lean to that. I don't. I
Hmm.
think backgrounds look cooler when they're a little looser, but I don't know, man. Like.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Anything you want to talk about, or you're working on, you want to bring up, or pitch, or talk about, or is there anything you want to mention? Where can people find anything you want to talk about at all? Before I,
No, I don't think I'm good to like. I always promise stuff. I'm working on things, and I always say like this thing's going to be done soon, and I don't want to say it's going to be done soon because then it won't be. So
people ask me
gotta
that about Game Cave. Where's Game Cave?
stuff like I've been working on that one tabletop game for like 4 years, but I've
Well,
got in the
I don't want
what's
to. I
that?
don't want to cut you off. Finish. Go ahead.
So I've got like 12 characters in the base game, and it's a PvP game. So like the balance is like massive, but I've also got like another 12 plus characters that would come in like expansions or stretch goals or just like new character packs to kind of like spice up the gameplay. And it's like balancing the 12 is hard enough and then adding characters just makes it so
Well,
much
Brandon and
harder.
I built a board game right before COVID, and I actually went out to Phoenix to, he got a version, he got the demo, like, the prototype up, and he'd been prototype playtesting it, at different gaming places for the better part of, 6 to 8 months. And I was like, all right, no, I'll play it, and because I didn't want to put any effort into art until, you know what I mean, the gameplay was figured out. I'm not putting any effort into art until the gameplay's worked out, because I'm not fucking changing art. Um,
Mhm.
but when COVID hit, I was like, well, we're not shipping fucking board games because I can't do playtesting now. You know what I mean? Like, we'll just put a pin in that one. So,
Yeah.
and all the elements of the game stuff it just requires effort, every page was like a poster. Like, I mean, even these, like, look at this. It's just an airbrush and some, let's go to lens flare. Yeah, but it works. Like,
Yeah, it sets the scene and it looks damn good.
yeah, I thought they hit their stride on the story, the mood coloring on Soul Saga. And eventually, Aaron Lucen, this is one last thing. Aaron Lucen did this thing with Chris Bachalo for uh, Elephant Man
She got
comic.
them.
And he did it over Bachalo's pencils, but I always thought like this came out really well too. Like it's
Mm.
cuts and grabs over pencils.
Yeah.
And like, look at his stuff. Like,
Yeah, it's like a Richard Starkings book, right?
yeah, yeah.
Cool.
And these are just raw pencils, bro, like no inks.
Cool.
So people are like, what are you a fan of? I'm like, all this stuff you folks ain't never heard of, you know? So,
it's like, does it have fun shape and it like breaks off the page? So, yeah, I probably like it.
you know, you don't get this from tracing over CGI models. I get it, you know, why people do it, but you know, shape design's so important to me, you know?
Yeah.
And then Joe Mad did. Look at the Battle Chasers version of Hip Flask.
I'll buy all the variant covers. Dude, I've got like a little prayer in my heart that somehow I can color somebody's variant cover. I can't imagine it's going to happen, but Battle Chasers is one of those bucket list things that I want to work on. And it's like, just let me color a variant. Like, let me color one panel in there, please. Just let me do something to say that I touched it.
Well, not too long ago, a few months back, for fun, I threw some colors over some of Liefeld stuff and just popped it in there because he was like, "Hey, you need colors?" So I'm like, "Hey, why not?" And he was not interested. So, you know what I mean? I'm like, well, you know, it's worth a shot. I thought it'd just be fun to do.
Yeah.
All right, so Steven, I think this has been a fun trip down, like memory lane, or and that, for me, it's not memories. I'm like, I look at this shit all the time, but like, people should check out some of the stuff if you're interested in, and give different rendering styles a look. I mean, I do think like this sort of thing is a really great blend between atmosphere and renders without overdoing anything. But I don't know, man. Like, I think people should check this stuff out, and you know, deadlines be damned, push themselves. Let's rage against the deadline, Steven. You know. Go for the glory! Go for the glory! You know, I'm gonna get some poor soul 10 years from now go, you told me to ignore the deadlines and I never got work again, you know. Hey, what do I know?
Yeah, don't listen to us.
Yeah, well, where can people find your art, man? You want to plug your stuffs?
I'm on artstation.com/Stephen Crow, and then also on Instagram at Instagram just Stephen.m.crow. But yeah, I don't post too often.
I'll put links in below. Everyone check out Steven stuff, dude. Steven, dude. Like I said, watching your art grow over the last 10 years has been super fun, dude. Like, I've just, like, every 3 months, I'm like, look at that. He's improving and I don't have to do shit. Like, unlike Brandon, right? Where like, I'm like, why can't you be like him, huh? Like, just get better. Fucking.
And I appreciate it. Sometimes I'm worried that I've plateaued and I'll never get any farther. But people tell me nice things, so I'm like, okay, just keep your head down and keep working.
Oh, if you ever want me to give you advice, I shit on my own shit. I'm like, you know, Rob, here's how you get better. You know what I mean? You go back and you look at this stuff and you wish you do the work of 5 people. You know, no. Nah, you're doing good, man. You keep on that path, dude. You know, don't stress over it. So,
Thanks, man.
Thanks for hanging out here and shoot the shit with me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, peace.